program, and I'm your host, Greg Fenton. Each week, we explore topics and ideas related to the experience of people with conflict and look to promote the profession of conflict resolvers. We are available to connect with at fentonmediation@gmail.com or at 647-227-4734. Check out the Facebook page for Mediation Station and the group also to ask to become a member. Also visit the YouTube channel, Fenton Mediation, to see videos of past shows. Listen to podcasts of Mediation Station on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Please follow us at our Twitter account at Fenton Mediation. The conversation today is called The Disconnection That Happens When Families Disconnect. With me today is Laura Tarcia as co-host, and joining us for conversation is Triena McGuirk. So preliminary stuff. The program is live each Sunday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time through Zoom. We will engage in conversation with everyone attending, able to listen and watch the conversation. Microphones and webcams will be closed, and if anyone wants to contribute to the conversation in any way, there are two options. One is to see the chat icon as a bubble located at the bottom center of your screen for you to click to then type in a comment or question and click to send. Or you can click on the reactions icon that is also located in the bottom center of your screen, then click on that within to click the hand icon. We'll open up your microphone only. You can speak to share your comment or question, and then we will close your microphone once again. The show is being recorded for both video and audio purposes that will be uploaded for public access on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts afterwards. Today then, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the disconnection that happens when families disconnect with Triena McGuirk. Laura, how you doing?
I'm trying to keep up.
With what?
With people who are somehow opening their cameras.
Yeah.
So I'm asking or reminding everybody, just in case you didn't see, that the show is being recorded. So if you turn off your cameras and your mics, that would be great. Well, I guess, and don't be an ass. Because Triena didn't see that, but there was someone who just opened their their video and did some not so fun gestures. So just enjoy the show and don't be an ass. So we can go on, we can carry on like that. I think everybody will live better that way.
Absolutely, we do want to have respectful discourse within and make sure that everybody behaves themselves. We do promote that people can express themselves their own way, though there's always qualifiers with that. So I know there was someone else in the room who wanted to open up their mic. No, we're not going to do that just for randomness. There's a purpose and intention here. So let's follow along the path and we'll work together to make this a good, meaningful, productive conversation together. So Laura, other than the the technical realities of Zoom bombers and whatever else that we're experiencing, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling all right. Thanks for asking. I'm looking forward to this discussion, especially because it's Triena, and I haven't seen Triena in so many months. I haven't heard either, so I'm so happy to see you. You look wonderful, Triena. And I can't wait to delve into the topic. I'm very curious. I always feel that since I met Triena, I felt that every single time in discussion I have with her is an amazing learning opportunity. So I'm just, I'm excited. I'm excited to delve into it. So that's how I feel. I feel excited, Greg.
Well, I'm glad for that. I appreciate that. Triena, how are you doing?
I'm well. Aside from the tech issues today, can't complain. I could use my teenage son here to fix it, but he's working till 10 tonight. So, but other than that, I'm good.
Well, we're in good hands with Laura here, and she's been doing this long enough with me to, it'll work out fine. I guess, we did start a little bit delayed, and I will blame that on the weather. So, all right. How about you share some information about yourself, Triena, first about your professional journey and background, per se.
My professional background, it's been a while. So I graduated, I guess it would be back in 1999 from Ryerson. I have a degree from Ryerson. My undergrad is in social work with a minor in public administration. Following my undergrad in social work, I then worked for Toronto Police. I worked for Children's Aid, Youth Link, Toronto Association for Persons with Disabilities, Toronto Association for Community Living, and Meta Center for Persons with Developmental Disabilities. I worked at those places prior to doing my master's in social work, which I completed at York and graduated from that in 2004. Within my master's, I wrote on the role of the protection worker in recidivism and child welfare. And for that research paper, I actually was awarded the Jerry Erickson Book Prize for best research for my graduating year for my research on that topic. Following the completion of my master's in 2006, I was impaneled with the Office of the Children's Lawyer, which I am still currently called to the same panel, conducting Section 12 assessments, voice of the child, clinical assists, and so forth. And then simultaneous to starting with the OCL, I also started on a journey working within education. So I was a school social social worker, servicing up to 2,500 youth and their families is the population that I'd be servicing within my catchment. And then in 2015, I continued my training and became trained as a family neutral and collaborative family law. And so from there, I kind of branched out into my private practice, doing Section 30s, voice of the child, mediation, co-mediation, anything that was child inclusive, essentially. That was usually my role, to be sitting at the table. So that's kind of my background, done a lot of workshops, a lot of training for parents, educators, persons in the legal profession, clinicians, primarily focusing on separation, divorce, and emotional harm, and trauma-informed practice are kind of my areas that I'm speaking to lately.
When I say the word, Triena, when I say the word connection, what comes to mind for you?
Very visual, a lot of visual things come to mind for me. But when I hear the word connection, I really think of relationships, joining, linking together, fitting together, and it kind of being a reciprocal exchange of energies and connection. That's kind of the thing that comes up for me when I hear that word.
Okay. Laura, I want to have you engage with this, but I know you're kind of like focused there.
He's treading water while trying to hold a conversation.
Multitasking is a...
Let's connect with her. Let's connect with her.
You know what? I do feel very connected to many people right now. So even though I also feel disconnected, and I would also like to disconnect some. So there's, I'm using it as a verb as well.
Well, if that's a need, that's a need. I mean, yeah, for sure.
It is, yes, it is a need.
You and I are always in the room. I may be the voice in the room for the majority of the weeks. You're always present. So we are somewhat connected. And at the same time, you know, this topic really resonated for me because I see myself in terms of the work I do, trying to create connections for people with themselves, and then by extension with those who are significant in their lives. So yeah, the word resonates for me and it works well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And we see it in our job too, when there is connection or lack of connection, right? So it can come up in different ways in different circumstances.
So how does family have connection? I mean, let's not make any assumptions. Like, what's sort of the idea in terms of family and connection?
So it can look different. Every family is unique. You know, there's no, magic set of rules and saying this is what connection is. But typically when you're looking at avenues where families can connect, you're looking at nurturing the foundation of the family. How are they nurturing the relationships? How are they sustaining themselves? How are they communicating? Do they have a communal sense of identity? Is there a sense of belonging amongst the family members? What are the family members' values? What are the qualities of the things that they love and admire about each other? Can they describe those things? Can they appreciate the things? Can they speak with a level of duality about members in their family, in the sense of, this is something really positive about one person, but this is something that I have a challenging part. That's all part of connection, is knowing, the strengths and challenges within our relationships. When families are connected, you'll often see, a set of routine, like a sense of rules or boundaries or limits that happen. And that's something that tends to fall away a lot for our families at times. And when you're looking at connection as well, just hearing things, I'm just having floods of conversations of children coming through my head as they speak to this, is you'll hear things like lasting memories or funny jokes or inside stories. So I find sometimes when I'm observing or holding space or sitting with families in whatever hat I'm wearing, those little nuances are really powerful to pick up on, because it, just that little, side joke or that smirk just can show to just such a depth of a connection that you can draw on at any different time. Then there's, just different things that families celebrate, like your traditions, or knowing what your children's dreams or aspirations are, and vice versa, and just children getting to know the humanity behind their parents as well. It's quite amazing sometimes what children tell me about knowing what's happening with their parents' journey, and them trying to support that connection when they see their parents in distress. So when I think of family connection, all of those things come up. Celebrations. How do you express yourself? Things you enjoy.
What if you find within, your professional work, that if someone is not feeling the connection with themselves, what would you try to do or help them to try to do?
That's a big one, and we see that a lot. I've seen that a lot actually grow more in the families and areas I'm in service to in the last decade. We're seeing, and I see that with, there's a plethora of social reasons why that's happening, but disconnection is happening more and more. And so one of the things, the baseline things that we always come back to, and it's something we all know, it's not complicated, it's self-care. Is when someone is feeling disconnected or overwhelmed from and disconnected from themselves, it is hard to connect with others, may it be your partner or your children or anyone else in your family. So one of the first things when someone is feeling so overwhelmed in the state of what's happening in their experience at present is I evaluate with them where their self-care lays. So that could look like, getting connected with your passions, turning off your phone and creating silent times, not always being readily available. That the fact that we have, these very handy and convenient devices are great, but they're also our nemesis in many ways for our own self-preservation, because we're not meant to be on call 24/7. So I would help look at where they can create windows of time in their days for self-care. And that's a big challenge for a lot of people, because it's a grind. The way we live in the GTA in particular, speaking to that in the families we service, life is really busy and there's not always time. So it's finding moments to create mindfulness, moments of self-care. And so it could be 10 minutes of, teaching them a breathing technique, walking through a simple guided meditation, how to engage in mindful eating, inviting, instead of going for your phone, teaching them little tips on journaling, different prompted journaling mechanisms. All of these things are tools. Going for a walk in nature, barefoot in nature, going swimming, enjoying things. All of these things tend to nurture ourselves, help form connection, but also simultaneously have been proven through various schools of research to also really reduce our stress levels as well. So when we can bring our stress levels down and we have an opportunity to review, reflect, be mindful of what our values are, what is important to us, and feed ourselves what we need, may it be through sleep or activity or connection with our community or friends, those are ways that I would help people start to get back to a baseline connection with self, if that's something they're coming to express as a concern for them.
Laura, how are you doing?
I was just I'm pretty much I'm ready to jump back in, Greg. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, I want us all to be connected.
I've gotten rid of, yes, you see how peaceful now is. I just had to put in my tentacles a little bit. Going back a little bit, Triena, I was wondering, I was thinking when you're talking about the disconnect and some of the modes and the things that you can do to reconnect to oneself or even to others. But I'm curious, in your experience and your knowledge, what did you find what are the causes of disconnecting? How do people become disconnected?
I think the way that, and this is again my opinion, but what I have seen time and time again, and this is across different socioeconomic backgrounds, it's across it hits everyone. If you're a human being, this hits you. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. And so the biggest thing that I have seen is just the way we have to work multiple jobs. Most families have to work multiple jobs just to make ends meet. And most families that have 2 full-time working parents are still struggling to make ends meet. And so what we're seeing is, as the cost of living goes up, the demands on us go up, we're seeing more family parents and some children, actually, for that matter, are also working to contribute to the family. Just when I've seen this steady increase in the cost of living and our wages not going up. So that has created a huge disconnection that I have observed through my experiences in the last, I would say, decade, for sure. We saw a lot of it start around 2008 when there was a little bit of a recession there. And then as things have gotten steadily more expensive the last 5-10 years, I've seen more children actively participating in the finances of the household and parents taking on second jobs. So I think the societal pressure and so I've seen this in families that are working this way, that are just to get food on the table. But then you have it on the other side where, families are making, sometimes, plentiful amounts of money, but when we get caught, when we earn more, we spend more. I think that's the biggest thing. And so no matter where you're at the financial spectrum, I'm seeing the same thing happen, because people are earning and spending to their potential when they have a lot of disposable income. And then the people that are just really trying to make ends meet and get food on the table, they're equally taxed, but from a different perspective and not as much abundance. So this kind of work grind mentality, and I see that as it's kind of almost like a social currency. They're like, oh well, I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I started working, and I put in a 16-hour day, and oh, I missed this dinner and I couldn't go to this conference, or I had to cancel my massage, because usually you hear it's work. And so I find when not everyone works in something they're passionate in. So that's one source of disconnection. If you're not passionate about what you're working in, that can be a source of disconnection. And then if you're working in something that you're not passionate in, or only zoning in your passion in one area, the disconnect will unravel. It's only a matter of time. And the body does keep score, as Dr. Gabor Mate has taught us over and over, right?
Just give a little context of who he is. So
Dr. Gabor Mate is, he's actually a physician by training. He's a Canadian physician, and he practices in Vancouver, I believe. And through the course of his work, he's really well-versed in trauma, and he became well-versed in trauma through supporting his main patient demographic at that time were persons impacted by addiction. And so when he was working with some highly vulnerable people with really severe addictions, what he saw as a common thread through his research and through his anecdotal observations in practice was that trauma was really at the root of addiction and in the root of a lot of afflictions that ail us, and trauma that is unprocessed will remain active in your body if you do not go through that process. So let's say you had a traumatic experience, may it be physical or emotional, and that sequence wasn't completed, the body will hold on to those tensions. And if we do not process our trauma, it can form forms of illness within us. So that could be chronic pain, chronic migraines, fibromyalgia, a lot of these autoimmune diseases that they're all encompassing and they don't really know where it comes from, rheumatoid arthritis. Those are the types of diseases that are often connected when the body holds on to trauma. So Dr. Mate really speaks quite eloquently about that. And then from a clinical perspective, just really how to be able to move clients from one place to another in just addressing thoughts and stories we tell ourselves through our traumatic experiences.
Well, I actually find that that's pretty scary stuff. I often hear people with addictions being very unkind to themselves and to the process of healing or recovery. And I do subscribe to Dr. Mate's for sure work, and he's amazing. He's someone I mean, anybody who's going through some stuff should listen to his videos and podcasts. I find them very, very useful.
Actually, the book I said was The Body Keeps Score, is Matt Dane.
Yes.
That was his. I think I said the other one, The Body Says No, is another book. Yeah. But yes, yeah, they're good videos to watch, and he is putting in a lot more content these days, which is great.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask, actually, in terms of healing, so disconnecting can come from just the grind and all that stuff, but also can come obviously from trauma, from childhood trauma, from any traumatic experiences that one goes through, and that in itself, then how would one go about dealing with that? Because some of the methods you've suggested definitely may work for some, and I'm wondering, would others need more therapeutic intervention? So would they need an external support in order to engage in a journey of recovery, healing?
Yeah, I think everyone could benefit from that support at any point. I know for myself, I've gone in and out of clinical supports at different points in my life just to unpack certain things. So there's always benefit to it. And I think as a society, we're kind of opening that door to make it less, of a stigma, if you will. There's no shame to go to see a doctor if your leg's broken, right? So you're not going to walk around dragging a broken leg. So if you have some unresolved traumas, there should be no shame to go and address that. And so one of the things with trauma is it's a journey. And so while we may see or have indicators of certain things that are coming out and manifesting in certain parental behaviors, I'm using a parental context for this example, you may see some things that are residual from a traumatic experience being manifested or presented in a parenting style. However, we can point those things out, in a kind and gentle and compassionate way, in a curious way, to understand more, because the more we understand, the better we can assist. But the thing is if a person isn't ready to come to the table to address certain things, they can't be forced to do that, right? So in terms of unpacking trauma, it's a lifelong journey. It really doesn't stop at certain points. It's always something that you're continually being mindful and aware of. But when you start to unpack or learn tools, even how to reflect, even if you don't want to unpack your trauma, even if you just want to reflect and just understand why you make certain decisions for yourself and understanding your boundaries, I think those are great practical places without getting into the heavy lifting of truly unpacking trauma. There's a ton of beautiful clinical methodologies that are being used. I'm trained in some, not all, related to unpacking trauma. One could be EMDR, which is a eye movement desensitization. We're getting into like somatic healing, really getting connected with the body and the sense of self. So just really helping people just be present, I think opens up the pathways. And if we're seeing trauma come out in, you know, if we're looking at a mediation or if we're looking at a parenting plan or something, if we're seeing trauma come out and that through process, you know, when I'm sitting at the table in the role of, you know, if I'm a child consultant or if I'm a family professional, then I would sit in caucus with that parent and I would, you know, I have a pretty good sense of sometimes where certain things lie without necessarily knowing a whole trauma history. So when you ask a certain question, you can pull on a thread. And so there's ways that we can support people that are having traumatic experiences and create an environment for them in our mediations and in our helping sessions in a way that honors where they're at coming to the table, but doesn't derail process. Because sometimes trauma will come to the table, mostly for us, we see it in anger and people getting really viscerally angry, you know, slamming hands on the ground or on the table and, you know, swearing or yelling over people. And sometimes then that can just trigger. So those are moments, there's always teachable moments with unpacking trauma that when you pull on those threads that can send someone off on a journey of self-discovery and healing, maybe not the time that we're involved with them, but definitely as something moving forward, because I know I've seen for myself and other clinicians I've spoke to that do this work, that families will come back and they'll say, hey, thank you for pointing that out. I went and I unpacked that, you know, 6 months down the road or a year down the road, and it's helped me and my family grow in this way. But it's, you know,
let me interject and sort of try and, you know, get into this disconnection focus for us tonight. What do you see as being
still focused on connection because that person is connecting. It has to reconnect.
I understand there's a deep impact. So that's what I really want to explore a little bit on a different context. So what do you see as being the impacts on family as they look to keep the sense of connection?
What do you mean by impact?
So what are the outcomes when people are trying
to
when
keep connecting?
When they are trying to keep connected, yet it seems to be lacking and it's transitioning towards a disconnection.
What's the impact when they're trying to connect and it leans toward a disconnection? So again, it circles back to that like 5 a.m. club, right? So I can't tell you how many parents I've sat with, and then I'm wearing my school social worker hat now when I'm thinking of this. And what I'm hearing from children is, I just want to spend some time with my mom or my dad. I just want time. And the disconnection, the impact can actually have really adverse social emotional implications for the child, no matter what their age or stage. So I want to preface that because we tend to forget about the teenagers, and the teenagers are equally as important when you're looking at the perspective of a child. So the impact could be, okay, well, we make a contract, for example, of 20 minutes a week with your child, undivided time. You go for a walk, you play a game of cards. We're not talking about money here. We're talking about time, actually spending time. And you would be amazed at how many families come back and say over and over that they couldn't find 20 minutes in the course of a week to spend with their child. So what happens is when you start to look at this, if you are trying to get connected and you're making efforts, and you're not following through with those efforts, that can have adverse implications for children in the sense that you can't find 20 minutes for me in the whole week. In the whole week, you can't find 20 minutes just to focus on me. And so And they see that, they know that, but we put in that exercise sometimes just to really demonstrate to the parent how little time they actually are spending with their child or their children at times. And, and children they'll do things in different ways. So they can, you have a spectrum. You'll have kids that become hyperachievers in the sense that they know that if they achieve something like, I've had a lot of rep athletes say to me, well, I know if I go to this level of hockey, or I go to this tournament, or I get into this competition, whatever the sport is, I know I'm guaranteed dedicated time with my child or my mom or my dad, right? I know they're going to have to shut down because that is important to them because they put so much money into it, and they will go. But so the need for connection is getting met, but the child is still feeling a level of disconnect because they have to hyperachieve to pull in to rein in the parent's attention. Then you have children that are on the other end of the spectrum that may not go into hyperachieving mode. They might internalize more. So then you're seeing more of a disconnect. You can see a depression or an anxiety or an indifference to parents. Sometimes you'll see, and across whether hyperachievers or kids that internalize more, you will see sometimes initiation of high risk behaviors will take place, because what a great way to get attention really fast is through something negative. We're always given attention really quickly. So this is what you see is sometimes kids they'll create ways to get the attention, whether it be through hyperachieving or through negative behaviors, because attention is attention at that point, and that is a way to fuel the connection. But it's not a longitudinal answer. It surfaces later on in life, and it creates other problems, and it creates issues with attachment, and it's issues within relationships and communication. There's so many things that can snowball for children and for families as they mature through that together.
Yeah, I wanted to bring in a comment from the audience that
Mhm.
it's hard for a lot of people to know their boundaries. And even if we do, I feel that we still have the tendency to push them. So, people trying to create that connection.
Yeah.
And then you just mentioned about these possible behaviors that are sort of harmful in some way.
Yeah. And the boundaries is hard too. Like boundaries, that's something we're never taught. No, I don't recall my parents ever having, hey, Triena, like, what are your boundaries? Like, no, we're not taught these things through our parents, and we're not taught these things at school, right? So really knowing your boundaries and how to assert yourself, in the how to assert yourself with confidence, and just assertiveness isn't aggression, and that comes down to the internal reflection. The more we reflect, the more we spend time with ourselves and look inward, the easier it can be to hold our boundaries and not be so malleable to what other people's needs are. Because I know for myself and a lot of people who are in helping professions, we tend to bend our boundaries personally sometimes or professionally just to go that extra mile to help people. But then sometimes, guess what? We're exhausted, or we're then extra depleted. So the boundaries are there for a reason. And I always use that, what do they say when you go on airplanes? If the oxygen goes out, put your mask on first. Same principle. That's what boundaries are. Put your mask on first, because if you're not taking care of yourself, guess what? You can't take care of other people.
I completely agree, and yet I find it so difficult. We do always go the extra mile, and this is why we are some of the people who will nod when you're saying this, but we also nod because we know we are exhausted because we are doing it. So yes. I did want to bring up, though, when you're talking about the child too disconnecting, and what are some of the how do you find technology playing a role in disconnecting, or a sense of a child's identity with self and connecting, or is disconnecting really with the family?
Okay, that is a huge, that could probably be like a whole night.
All right, I'm gonna go grab the wine. I'll be right back.
I
Exactly.
thought you already had that.
Yeah. She has her wine in a
I
teacup.
made a point.
Oh, okay. We got, all right.
Yeah. So this is a big one. And, you know, based just on the years where I've practiced and where I was, I actually saw this one really unfold in real time. So with the, I think it was like around 2009, 2010, that's when we really had the insurgence of pocket technology, like pocket smartphones. That's when, excuse me, it became rampant. And I was in a middle school at that time. And so in middle schools, that's just a social experiment unto itself. we need children to be together. I found a plethora of other issues for kids in middle school that they didn't have in other school settings. But when I would look at the kids in the middle school and they started to get access to this technology, I really saw an increase in the social disruption in the classroom and behaviors outside the class and in the hallways. And then as it moved forward over the last decade, I have seen so many issues come from technology. So, you know, just speaking to what technology does is it's such a beautiful tool for connection for kids. So let me preface it with that. It is a beautiful tool. You know, I remember being a teenager talking on the phone endlessly for hours. If anyone else wanted to use the phone in the house, they had to like tell me to get off the phone. So, you know, there is a context here where this is a form of connection for our kids, right? So it is a tool, and I don't want to deter that for them in that capacity. However, with the introduction of the social media on that technology for them, that adds another layer. So you're getting into, you know, platforms. Kids don't really use Facebook. That's more of, you know, the adults at this point, but Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, those are kind of the Discord. Those are the platforms that the kids are on. And what you're finding, and there's research coming out on this to substantiate what I'm seeing now, because, you know, it takes about a decade for the numbers to all come rolling out, is when you're seeing, like, if you're on an Instagram post, kids are starting to attach their value to the number of likes. You know, they have a number of likes or hearts as Instagram, likes as Facebook, or on Snapchat, it's, you know, you snap pictures back and forth. And if a person misses a day, they internalize that as the end of, you know, the end of their relationship, or they've done something wrong. So we're starting to see things like body dysmorphia come in a lot for girls in particular, with all the filters, not liking the way they look. I've had doctors actually say to me, and I've not a lot, but like two, said that the child that I was inquiring about when I'm contacting them as a collateral, you know, wanted to look like literally their filter. So we're seeing this body dysmorphia come out in girls, not understanding boundaries in terms of sexuality. We're seeing a lot of predators are online. I can tell you there are so many groomers and so many traffickers on these platforms, and they know how to access our kids. And when I say kids are being trafficked in the 400 areas, I'm saying they're doing it through these platforms, and kids are being trafficked that live at home. That's a misnomer, that if you're a trafficked youth, that you are, you know, displaced from your family or you're living on the street. No, no, no. We have people being trafficked that go home to mom and dad after school, or work part-time jobs and so forth. So this is what we're seeing happen on social media. Also bullying. The bullying, I've seen a really huge onset. I haven't seen it with the boys as much as I've seen the girls. And there's a level of criminality that's coming into the online bullying that's taking place for our kids. And so that's coming into the educational setting. And then, and so you're seeing a real connection between schools and law enforcement now, because what's happening with online platforms is happening and impacting what's happening on the school ground. And so when you're looking at, I just want to circle back to the likes and you know, the continuous Snapchats and so forth, or having a certain amount of followers or a certain amount of comments. What happens is our dopamine system gets hijacked, right? So that's a reward system of the brain. So every time you get a like or a subscribe or a heart or a comment, that's like, it's like Pavlov's dog. You're giving them a candy, like ding, you hear the bell, you get the candy. And so that's what it's like. So the more you get that fix from that like or that comment, the more you're going to crave it. And guess what? 5 likes isn't going to do it anymore. You need 10 likes. And then there's this constant social pressure to put out content, to get likes, to be liked. And so what we're seeing is when our children are over engaging in their social media, their sleep hygiene is being affected, meaning like they're sleeping beside their phones, not on airplane mode. So then you have, the radiation emitting from a device in proximity to a developing brain all night. So there's that kind of physiological reality that we're looking at. But then you're looking at, that instant response that you have to get up and respond to people and get that fix. So it becomes a level of addiction. And I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, the school board I work with, and we're the second largest school board in Canada. And we did a survey of everyone that worked for the school board. If you worked for the school board and you could be a janitor, you could be a teacher, you could be a superintendent, everyone participated in this because we all see kids in our different roles in that system. And the primary concerns that we were seeing come out were addiction to gaming, depression, anxiety, and addiction to energy drinks. Those were the 4 primary ones that were coming forward. And a lot of those intersect with what's happening with technology and social media. So in terms of forming an identity, it's really hard for our children to form an identity and sense of self when the world that they're forming these pivotal pathways in their brain, they're forming neural pathways in their brain that we're not doing it in a real way. You're attaching value to a picture that you photoshopped. That's not adding to your identity. That's adding to a false nuance or a what's it called when you have a character that you've presented online for yourself. So kids were starting to see that they're just following, they're not getting a sense of what their true values are, what they stand for. A lot of the conversations I have with teenagers is just really connecting them for what feels okay for them and understanding what this technology is and how it can hijack their happiness as well as add to their happiness, and how to have a relationship with social media that's in a balancing way, because it's only a piece of your social interactions that help you form your identity. There's a whole plethora of things that our kids are missing that they're not always engaging in because they're spending more time the ironic part is, as a parent, who I'm a parent of teenagers, it's nice when you're like, oh, they're in technology, they're home, I always know where they are, they're safe. But we're seeing kids that are not even connecting with their families when they are home. We're having kids that don't eat dinner with their families. Or if they do eat dinner, everyone's on their phone at dinner. So technology is impeding and impacting identity for youth, but it's also impeding and disconnecting identity for families as well, because we as parents have the same addiction as our kids do. It may not be the same platforms, but we do have the same kind of go-to.
What responsibility then do parents have if this is the reality? I mean, we can talk all we want about the ideal. This would be the best way or the healthiest way to do things. If kids are doing this, what does that say about the dynamic within the family in some way, or the dynamic amongst the two parents of the children? Even if they are separated families, not all families, as we know, are constructed or stay together as the traditional unit.
Nuclear family, yeah.
Right. So what does that say overall?
Sorry, my brain is popping all over. I have so many different things going on that question. What does it say overall, like in terms of?
Well, if kids, this is the reality. The kids are dealing with their their identity, their sense of self from the
Yeah.
construct that society is presenting as this, and then kids gravitate towards that sense of self because of that, how it's framed and presented through media, and the technology and the platforms and the opportunities that the platforms are creating. I mean, this question can go off in many different
Yeah.
tangents.
So I think like one of the things is this is new, right? So it's kind of like everything we know that's bad for our health, we don't learn until after the damage has been done, right? So and we've seen this like with smoking, for example, right? Oh, smoking is good for you. Guess what? Smoking's not so good for you. So I think the biggest piece, I know when I'm meeting with parents, ever I'm speaking at like parent literacy conferences, it's just educating them about it. Because when we have the tools and understand what these systems do, that because they are systems, they're systems of engagement, they're systems of social control, they're systems of social influence. When we understand what these systems do, we can then inform ourselves and then teach our children better. And I know for myself, like this has been a learning curve. I've raised teenagers through this and I've rode this wave with them. And some of it is, you know, conversations I know I've personally had was just because everyone else gets a cell phone in grade 6 doesn't mean you need to. And so my kids didn't like it. They got their first cell phones in grade 10. But that was like, they were almost like the social outcasts because everyone had a cell phone in grade 6. So I found sometimes I know for me going through this as a parent and then also walking with other parents that have gone through this with teenagers or children that they're coming to me for assistance is educating and in making collaborative informed decisions with the children and coming up with rules and also for the parents to follow those same rules. So if, you know, there's a rule of your phone goes off and it's on airplane mode and we all put them in a box at night, guess what? Mom and dad's goes in there too. So I find when you have the children be active participants in understanding this and balancing the risks, you know, it's the same as everything else we're teaching our kids. This is just one more. We teach them how to drive, how to ride a bike safely, how to walk down the street safely. And this is just one more thing that we really need to inform ourselves and also inform our kids about to participate in safe ways.
And I like that because I think we definitely need to learn alongside with them. Because it is a journey for us as well. It's not just children who are or youth or teenagers who are exposed to this, but we're also exposed. I feel very just my own self. I sometimes I'm the mom who sat at the dinner table with a phone there. So I or my laptop, and we're all engaged, seemingly connected and connecting. However, we were all connected to different devices and had a meal, and then we were going to bed and start all over again. So I think when I started realizing what we're doing is when we started just taking walks together. And that was because of a completely different other reason. It was just because it was nice outside, it was summer. So we just wanted to embrace that. And then it was such a great reminder of how cool it is to talk about the day, to talk about feelings, about crushes that they have and things like that, that I have forgotten they exist as topics of conversation. And then it just got us even more thirsty to talk about it. So it sort of, moved into the dinner tables or breakfast conversations, but certainly it's a together journey that I think many families, parents and children are going through.
Yeah, and you made a really good point there, Laura, because proximity doesn't mean you're present, right? Just because you're in proximity to each other doesn't mean you're present. And I think that for me too is one of the biggest learning curves I had as a parent, because you're work, and and sometimes you just got to put it down, right? Yeah.
And I would add that with the word connection, there's different ways to connect, and what would be okay with one family in terms of that sense of connection might be a total disconnect for another family in their relationship with the parent with the child, or even the parent with the other parent. There's
Mhm.
different matters, depths, levels, degrees of, this whole word connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just really about tuning in too, right? And being present, right? So, different parents are going to have different connections with different kids, right?
What would you suggest as a way to intersect or interject if there's a sense that one parent is uh, going off the pathway of the connection, they're disconnecting? How can we realign them or provide the space for the parent to feel they can be, but of course having knowledge that the individual has ownership of their own decision making, what they do with it?
Sorry, if one person, I was just reading a comment came up in the chat. I can't multitask, Greg.
I'll take care of the chatty.
I know, I never noticed it before and it just popped up and I'm like, squirrel. So
It's okay. No, my point, I'll interject with the comment in a moment. First,
okay, yes.
my question was more about how do we sort of support a person when they're going off this pathway of the connection to the disconnection?
When they're getting to moving toward disconnection.
Yeah.
Again, it's supporting, it's finding what nurtures them, how help them find a balance in their life. So it could be coming from different reasons, right? There could be a multitude of different variables that could be happening. So like I'm just, if someone's coming to the table and we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg that, the child's displaying, a behavioral issue or something. One of the things, and they're not, the parent is not as actively engaged as they used to, that I'm hearing this through the voice of the child, because typically it's the children who I access first, and then I come to work through the family that way. And so what I find is that the child will notice a disconnection for whatever reason, start to internalize it, or come out as behaviors, or both. And then when you have that conversation with the parent, you start to unpack that, okay, the disconnection was the symptom of bigger issues. So then you might see family illness or transiency or different socioeconomic issues coming forward, or violence. So when you can wrap around a person from a holistic perspective and help them find balance and manage things in their life, then you can help them reinvite pathways to reestablish that connection, while simultaneously balancing balancing all of the things they're carrying on their back at the same time. And so sometimes, I know us as parents, we often don't express our details to children if we are going through things. So say if we are, going through a financial problem, or, going through our own illness, or taking care of an ill family member, we often omit those details from our kids, thinking we're protecting them, right? But really kids are incredibly intuitive, and most of our communication is nonverbal. So when you're looking at things through like the cone of experience, it's palpable. These are energetic shifts that you don't need to say anything to your kid. Your kid is part of you. They zone in. They could read you like a book. So bringing awareness that when you're going through a challenging point and you feel yourself disconnecting, and you have that awareness to say, hey, I'm starting to disconnect. It's okay to tell your children or your partner to say, hey, I'm going through something. Obviously with children, you'll vet it for age appropriateness for the content of what you're experiencing. But if you bring voice to say, hey, this is what I'm going through, and this is why I'm distant, or whatever way the behavior of disconnection manifests in that instance, then that itself helps preserve the connection.
Okay.
Sorry, Greg, what do you want to say?
I just wanted to inject the commentary.
Okay, go ahead and inject.
And then you get.
Sure.
So couple of comments. Great way to make it natural, Laura. Sometimes the kids know that dinner is coming and they have to behave. A walk or an activity, it's a fun way and natural way to connect to. And then the other comment is, Triena, you are right. Very important points to address. Laura.
Oh, thank you, Greg. Now I can speak. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
One thing going back a little bit, actually, when you were talking about the likes on Instagram and all the I don't even know, you mentioned one of them that I don't even know that it existed, one platform, but I can't even remember it. So the new platforms that they're engaging, and every single time you're mentioning the likes and the stimulation and the hyper, it's gambling. It's really like gambling.
Right.
So it's a gambling environment, and really that's why we're exposing, or we're allowing exposure to our children to a gambling environment, to a casino in our own homes that we're paying for the internet. So
Dopamine, right? Yeah.
it's an easy accessible casino, because really it produces almost the same reactions or behaviors as someone who's addicted to gambling. And I remember there was an episode in, I don't know if you've ever known or seen Black Mirror. It was an episode.
I've known the show. I haven't seen a lot of the episodes, but I know.
So crazy. It was that episode. It was really about the likes. It was you were going for likes, and your whole profile and identity and credibility, everything in the community, in that neighborhood was contingent upon how many likes were on your device. So wow. You had a score. You were a walking score, essentially. So in any gathering, you had a score.
You have that currency. You have that score.
That's the currency. Yes. So it was. It's quite incredible that we are living that life.
It's a real thing in high schools and even younger.
Yes. Even younger, absolutely, even younger. Now they can children can access their laptop or device at like 3 years old, 2, 3. They can. Yeah. It's quite, and they've made it quite intuitive for that age as well. So it is quite interesting. And I like your comment about the sharing, because we're oftentimes afraid to share challenges with our children, and I have noticed that once we don't share those challenges, they do know us. They sense us when we're stressed, when we're low, when we're moving away from our natural state. It is incredible that allowing them to connect with our context, with what we're going through. And allowing them to have a window into what we're going through, it's so important, because they are making up their own context at that time. If we're not sharing exactly what we're going through, and yes, it is age appropriate, it has to be. But if there are financial struggles, those have to be shared. I have a friend who was always protecting her daughter, didn't want her daughter ever to know about her financial troubles. And yet, I think she was only home for 5 hours during the night, and she was working 3 jobs. She was leaving at 5 a.m. She was coming home extremely late. She was, barely making her lunch, barely. And her daughter was, I think, 13, 14, and she had no idea where mom was all the time. And she didn't want to tell, the daughter. My friend didn't want to tell the daughter, so she doesn't worry about, about the financial struggles. And in the end, we had a tete-a-tete, and we had a conversation, and we talked about it, and we inserted a bit of humor. We inserted a bit of, what did you think? Where mom was. We elicited, how she felt, and she felt completely disconnected from mom, and yet mom was working for her, right? Yeah. It's very important. I find that extremely important, and we don't do it enough. We do not share challenges with kids, thinking that we are doing them. We're not protecting them, and we're doing the opposite, unfortunately.
And the challenges I find too are like, there's such opportunities to show humility and to show resilience and to demonstrate support, and how we can connect and support each other through this. And so, adversity is sometimes our biggest teacher. And so I think it's okay to share that with our children in an age appropriate way, because when we can show them we could walk with adversity with integrity and compassion and humility, then guess what? They're learning that skill to carry forward when they go outside in the world too, because life is always going to throw curveballs at you. You can't protect them from everything.
Yeah, and I have the awareness that life is not always a smooth sailing situation. What was that word?
Peachy.
Peachy keen. Yeah, I mean, the reality of life has ups and downs and curveballs all the time, like you were just mentioning, Triena. So
Yeah.
why did you want to have this conversation on disconnection in families?
Because I feel, honestly, no matter what hat I'm wearing, whether I'm an assessor for OCL, or if I'm a family professional sitting, in a collaborative scene, or a child consultant brought in mediation, or a school social worker, the theme is the same, and I've seen it, and it's growing. And honestly, it is probably the thing that breaks my heart the most. It breaks my heart because I sit with these children and they tell me, right? The kids tell me, and I consider myself their advocate, and I can tell you that they don't need all of this fancy stuff we provide, and we think we have to give them to keep up with the Joneses mentality. That's great, but they need us. They need us to be present in our relationships with them. And I'm a single parent. I know how difficult that is, doing that in any situation. And I'm personally displaced from my family. My family's away from here, so I see it. I've walked through it myself, and I also experience it with the family. So that's why I feel it's so important, because really the family is the foundation, right? That's the foundation for children, for them to springboard and move forward into their lives. And if we have cracks in our foundation, and we all do, but these are cracks that we can fix. These are cracks that we are aware of, and these are cracks that we can bring focus to hopefully not have such adverse long-term outcomes for our kids.
Now I feel I have to connect with my kids. Thanks, Triena. now I feel I have to talk to them.
There you go. There you go. I find driving is the best thing. Driving and walking. I have family dinners because they're teenagers now. I'm a taxi, but I got to appreciate the taxiing, because I get the best conversations when I'm taxiing. So thankful for that.
That is the best trap talk box for sure. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the walking, yes. I find, and this is where technology is coming into play too. Technology can be positive in these situations, right? Because I have family who's far away, so if we wouldn't have the technology, we wouldn't be able to speak every day. So I speak with my mom every single day, even though she's in Romania. So we speak every single day. So we still have the connection because of this technology. So it's how we use it, right? It's what you said earlier. It's the balanced way of using it, and it's the positive way of using it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And we have to close out very soon. What can you say, Triena, are options or resources that you can suggest for people who are concerned about the sense of disconnection that is happening within themselves and also in their relationship with their fellow partner, co-parent, if they have that?
So for disconnection with yourself, there's lots of good books out there. One that I can think of off the top of my head is, what is it called? The 5 Love Languages of Children, The Secret to Loving Children Effectively. They talk about different ways, and it's just about the communication and how children express themselves through action and behavior. There was another book called, what was it? The Secrets of Happy Families by Bruce, I want to say Philip. It starts with an F. I apologize, I can't remember his last name. But basically, it's just a blueprint for modern families and how to really maximize connections and opportunities in your family. And they pull on different disciplines in the book. They pull on like examples from science and business and sports and so forth, just to kind of exemplify that these modalities can be applied to your family as well. There's also I'm trying to think of other resources. I would say just really getting connected with mindfulness is really the biggest one for me. Because when you can practice mindfulness and go inward, you then can just understand where your values align more. So whether it be through, mindfulness coaching or connect with counselors or just someone who's brief service that could really pull out, you need someone who's really good at pulling out those kinds of values with you. So you don't have to go into an ongoing counseling session, but just to really help you get a clear sense of that. But I find mindfulness is really the biggest, and meditation are the biggest, tools. And I've taught kids as young as 4 years old to meditate and be able to, walk themselves from, behavior escalation into cooling down themselves, and they can identify and communicate clear. So once it create the space for yourself is the biggest thing. Journal, go connect with nature, go for walks. There's a great documentary on, I think it's Amazon Prime, and it's called Happiness. And it's a documentary that looks at who are the happiest people in the world. And what it showed, and through the documentary pulling on research, is that the happiest people in the world, once your baseline of basic needs are met. So obviously homelessness, you have, a whole other set of issues to worry about there. But once you get your baseline needs met, there's really no difference between someone who makes 30,000-40,000 a year and someone who makes 50 million a year in terms of their happiness. The money is irrelevant. And I think that's the biggest thing to come out of this, is that I see we're in such a grind all the time, for that, is that true happiness and true connection doesn't come from these external things. It comes from within. And so that documentary I found was a really powerful reminder for that. Just to kind of focus inward more and not worry about the external.
Don't worry about the likes.
Not worry about the likes.
How are we gonna get the likes if we don't worry about the likes?
The jewelry, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Laura,
Yeah,
did you identify the name of that author?
Yes, it's in the chat. The author that she's talking about.
Ruth Feiler?
Yes.
Is that the one? Feiler?
Yes.
Is that Triena, the
And then,
name of it?
yeah, I couldn't remember the last name. I know it started with an F. And then like Dr. Dan Siegel, he's wrote some really great ones for kids as well. Dr. Marie Natalie Boudin has written a lot of neuroscience and connection in families. So we have there's a lot of anything in neuroscience connection that way. I feel that's where I really started on that journey personally and professionally, was the realm of neuroscience. It was a real game changer for me in understanding this stuff.
So what would you like people to, who are watching this, to realize as a lesson learned?
That you're enough. You don't need to buy everything for your kids, that they just want you, and just spend time with them. Just spend some time with them, connect with them it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, not watching TV. TV is, is a distraction, but, play a game, go for a walk, teach them how to bake, teach them something you know how to do, teach them, share a story from your youth. That's really the message I get from kids. They just want to spend more time with their parents.
I think it would be really nice if I'm gonna rewatch the show, Triena, and I'm gonna put a list together, just those takeaways, and just maybe share that and see how many likes I get on my social media. Because I think, I think those are important, but I find that we as adults and parents, I think we're also sometimes like our brains are hijacked too. So we don't even come up with all of this creative stuff anymore, right? I mean, what you're saying right now, such as, sharing a story from your youth, things like that. I think I think families would do that if they kind of like, they understand that that would be important for the children, right? I mean, if they get the message that that's what the message is. The message is not to buy them, a particular thing, but it is to spend that time. And how can we spend that time? These are some of the creative ways, or cooking or whatever. That it could be simple, but it could be so valuable, and it's what is going to create those memories.
And it's what creates connection. And I can tell you how many times I've inadvertently, just have said to a child about, oh yeah, your parents shared this, that they did this news, and like, I know nothing about that. I didn't know my parent was this elite athlete and traveled all over the place, and they got angry. They're like, I don't know who this person is. So this is the thing, the kids, we have everything our kids want. We just forget that, right? We forget that.
So thank you very much. Comment, I do agree that quality time with children are very important. So
beautiful.
Anybody have any comment from the audience that or question to ask as we soon sign off? Laura, anything you other than trying to get some likes?
No, I'm gonna go and connect with my children. So on that note, Triena, thank you so much. Thanks for joining. Sorry about the beginning tech difficulties, but hopefully we'll have this opportunity again and expand on some of the very important topics that we're permeating this large subject.
Yeah, it is a large one for sure. But thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to share that voice, because it comes from the kids, my friends. It comes from the kids.
That's the best voice.
Yeah, and there'll be, the product of this that will be edited and then uploaded to YouTube, etc., and then shared on social media, of course, on different platforms, right?
Let's see who gets the most amount of likes. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Triena. We're going to say goodnight and sweet dreams, and connect with your children and your family, really, or yourself. It starts with self.
Exactly. Start with self.
Yeah, Triena, thank you very much for taking the time with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Such a wise and knowledgeable panel. I just want to get these out before we depart. Knowledgeable. So all the best, Triena, and everything else.
Great. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.